And we're back. Hello, everyone.
Hello, thank you for having me back.
It's my pleasure. Okay. The next question we have on our list is, do you find that some clients reach outside traditional methods to fulfill spiritual needs?
Completely. Especially with me, I do this alternative ceremonial work with these indigenous groups and with the meditation group up here that uses those same ceremonial methodologies. Perhaps that wouldn't be considered traditional, even though it is very old, very ancient. And again, it's a topic I know we're not really going to get into in this talk, but there's a lot of similarities with what these groups do, with what some of the I don't want to say founders, but the peoples from which the major monotheistic and other religions were grown from. And so, like we were talking off camera, at the core, there's a lot of beautiful things going on in all religions and faiths and ways of accessing these spiritual parts of ourselves. But anyway, to answer your question again, yes, we talked a little bit before about these meditations I'll bring people through. For some people, their past life stuff comes up, which would be considered, I think, non-traditional in American culture. Yes. Although I think it's becoming more and more common to talk about things like that. So this idea that we could have trauma from past lives that we carry with us into this life that still needs to be healed sometimes, or lessons that we learned in other lives that can then help us in this life. So sometimes I'll work through things like that with people. There's a lot of non-traditional. There's one, I don't feel bad about talking about this. It's legal. There's this sacred tobacco.
Yeah.
I showed you. You know about the pipe.
Yes.
The magic pipe.
TP.
Good job.
Sticks. Yes.
So there's I've started using in a very sacred ceremonial fashion this tobacco for people. The hape, yes, in some meditations. It's not for everybody, and it's not for every situation, and we certainly don't want to become dependent on any tool. We don't want to say, well, in order for me to be at peace, I need to be in my meditation room, on my magical carpet, or whatever. The goal is that you can tune in and be at
anywhere,
peace.
anytime.
Yes, and especially in the trenches, right? When it's hard, it can't just be when you're off in the mountains. But that's a non-traditional method that is also available, and I can think of quite a few. But it's funny because I understand the question as you're asking it, and at the same time I'm thinking, gosh, these
what really is traditional?
I'm like, these things seem more traditional than like two people sitting out under a tree, talking about these things.
I think when the question was written, we meant like yoga, stuff you see in the media. Oming. That. But that would be in our sense. I guess less traditional, mainly because less people use it or are aware of it. Right.
I understand. I understand that completely, but it is funny to me that like taking a pill for something, like a quick pill, and certainly there's a time and a place for that, but that would be considered the more traditional thing to do versus like a natural remedy for some more like taking the whole plant. It's not. I'm not a scientist or a nutritionist or any kind of biologist or a botanist to talk about this with any authority, but I learned a little bit about this from some people who were down in Brazil recently, and they were talking about, I don't even remember if it was aspirin or Tylenol, but how we kind of extract this active ingredient from the plant. Yes. And I don't remember which organ it's really bad for, if it's your liver, but if you take too much of this aspirin or Tylenol, like it really does a number on this organ, and there's some other negative side effects because of the way we've isolated it and whatever else we add in and how it's manufactured. And they have down there the whole plant. And they're like, well, no, if you take the whole plant, the fiber and the leaves and this, it doesn't have that negative side effect.
It eliminates it because of the way it's organically.
So it doesn't have the negative side effects, and then it still gets rid of the headache or whatever the reason was you took it in the first place. So to me, that would be the more traditional. Like that would be the, the alternative way would be the processed way.
Yeah.
So I think it's flipped in my head for me.
It's all the same, honestly.
It's all,
yeah.
Yeah. We're just trying to heal ourselves.
Yeah. All right. The last question on the official Costello interview. Our thesis is based on the natural inclination of humans to explore or develop their spirituality. Do you think that unless an individual explores spirituality, they will not be fully satiated?
What a great question. Well, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like there's those circles of here's what we know.
Don't go out.
Here's what's it?
Don't go out.
Don't go out.
Of what you know, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then there's like, here's the things we know we don't know, and then it keeps going out to like there's things we just have no idea we don't even know. Actually, there's a quote. I forget who said it now. I feel like it's a Sir Arthur. I don't know. You can look it up. Google it. But the universe is not only stranger than we suppose, it's stranger than we can suppose. So we can't even fathom how crazy things are.
We try anyway.
We keep trying, yeah. So, in my humble opinion, I do think people are missing out that don't go exploring externally, internally, in all the gazillion directions you can go. Let's say someone doesn't realize that those things exist and they die happy with what they had and they feel satiated or fulfilled.
Yes.
Great. That's beautiful. But what if there was an even greater level of satisfaction? Yeah. And I think I think there is. I think that there's like a little kid can be happy with like I give you this I'm like here's this rake and you're like yes and you're like playing with it for 4 hours and it's like the greatest thing ever. I have needs other than this rake in my life right now, like, and so I feel like I don't want to take away the fulfillment of wherever anybody is, myself included. That doesn't mean there aren't deeper and more complex and beautiful ways of being fulfilled.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
It's a good way to answer. Because like the short answer is usually either yes. Can they see me? Hopefully that's in the video.
Do you know the song from Little Mermaid?
Yeah. I wanna be where the people are.
Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete? Wouldn't you think I'm a girl? That's it. I know the whole song, I'm not singing it.
Yeah. I know the beat. Alright, well thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. It was a wonderful talk. So glad I was the one who got to do it.
Yeah, I was glad to hear you were coming.
Thank you.
No offense to the other ones in the group.
I'll just cut that out myself. No, I'm kidding. Alright. Costello tuning out.